At 2:13 a.m., the abandoned tunnel answered a whistle with its own. The sound cut through the crushing darkness, then vanished, leaving a cold echo that never left us. My name is Tyler, a maintenance technician for the city's subway system. I took the job because the pay was good, not because I loved the underground. 6 years later, I learned that the tunnels teach you a lesson faster than any safety manual. My partner Miller, 10 years older, forever dust gray, and silent as the concrete walls, knew the rules better than anyone. He never asked questions. He just followed the one rule the foreman gave us before we ever stepped onto the black line: absolute silence, and never, under any circumstance, whistle. We thought it was superstition, a quirky safety protocol. None of that mattered after the night of June 16, 2026, when the line's darkness answered back. Breath. The setup: we rode the rusted utility elevator down to the black line, a forgotten branch sealed off after a mysterious cave-in in the 1920s. The metal doors groaned as we forced them open, revealing a tunnel that seemed to swallow sound itself. The air was thick with ozone and the smell of wet, rotting iron. Our flashlights cut thin slices of light through clouds of dust that drifted like phantom snow. The walls were slick, the floor uneven, the silence absolute, a vacuum that pressed against our eardrums. First contact: Jackson, the youngest of the crew, cracked a joke and then, on impulse, let out a sharp whistle. It pierced the void, a thin blade of sound that seemed to linger for an eternity before dying. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then Miller slammed Jackson against the brick wall. "Do not whistle," he hissed, eyes flashing with a fear that went deeper than anger. The warning hung in the air like a warning bell. Breath. But it gets worse. Escalation. The voices. Hours passed as we replaced burnt-out bulbs and patched a leaking conduit. The tunnel's darkness was oppressive, but the real terror began when Jackson dropped his wrench and froze. "I think someone's calling my name," he whispered, voice trembling. A faint, distant voice echoed back, garbled and choking, saying, "We're here." The sound seemed to come from the concrete itself, as if the walls were breathing. Breath. Lee laughed nervously. "It's just an echo, right? Some radio interference." Yet his flashlight trembled, the beam quivering like a leaf in a storm. Here's what they missed. Jackson tried to block the sound with foam earplugs. Miller snatched them away, explaining in a low, poisonous whisper, "If they realize you can't hear them, they'll come closer." The room fell into a suffocating hush. Then a series of sharp taps began, tap, tap, as if something was striking the concrete with bone-hard fingers. The reveal: Jackson pressed his ear to the wall. For a second we heard his mother's voice, soft and pleading. "Tyler, it's so cold down here." The name wasn't his. It was his own, twisted into a familiar tone. The tunnel filled with a chorus of whispers, giggles, and wet, raspy laughs that seemed to crawl up the walls. The sound grew louder, a wall of noise that pressed against our skulls. Breath. That was the easy part. Confrontation. The whistle returned suddenly. The noise stopped. A single, sharp whistle sliced through the silence, the exact whistle Jackson had blown hours earlier. It came from the deepest darkness, slow and deliberate, as if something was mimicking us. Jackson's face went white. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "This is a prank," he whispered, but his voice cracked. Breath. Lee bolted for the exit, shouting, "Open the door!" Miller grabbed his arm, his grip ironed cold. "Do not run yet," he said, voice low as a tomb. "If we move now, they'll play with us." Jackson stepped toward the blackness, eyes vacant, muttering about his mother's cries. He vanished into the void, his flashlight flickering and dying. A wet, sickening crunch followed, a sound of raw meat being torn from bone. No scream, just a guttural gasp. Breath. The tunnel erupted with dozens of distorted voices, all echoing Jackson in a demonic chorus. Black liquid began dripping from the ceiling, splattering our faces. Our flashlights sputtered and died, plunging us into total darkness. My pocket lantern flickered on, casting a weak circle of light on the floor where Lee had knelt. He was gone. Only his flashlight rolled in a slow, endless circle. Breath. Miller's hand clamped down on my arm. Run. No matter what you hear, do not look back. Do not breathe too loud. Ruined. We sprinted toward the elevator, the sound of bones scraping along concrete, following us like a predator stalking prey. The heavy iron door at the tunnel's mouth loomed ahead. Miller shoved me through, slamming the door shut behind him. He turned, his face twisted into a jagged, unnatural grin that stretched across his mouth. Behind him, pale, hollow faces materialized, each wearing Miller's grotesque smile. Breath. I vaulted into the elevator, pounding the button with desperation. The doors began to close, and the iron door below shattered with a deafening clang. A chorus of whistles rose up the shaft, morphing into my own name. Tyler, calling me back down. The official report later claimed a tunnel collapse killed Jackson and Lee. Search teams never recovered their bodies. When HR dug up Miller's employment file, they found no record of a man by that name ever working for the Transit Authority. The supervisor stared at me. Tyler, only you, Jackson, and Lee went down. There was no fourth man. I quit that night, never collecting my final paycheck. I moved to a sunny town, on the 3rd floor, where concrete supports my floor and daylight never fades. I live with PTSD, antidepressants, and a constant hum of the TV or radio to drown the void. The memory of that whistle of the tunnel answering back still haunts me. I never step into a subway again. I don't see ghosts, but every time I close my eyes I see Miller's impossible grin and hear that endless, echoing whistle. I eventually found a semblant peace, but the black line still lives in my nightmares. Some of my coworkers swear they hear a faint whistle when the tunnels are empty, and a few have reported hearing their own names called from the darkness. What really dwells down there? The question lingers, a cold breath at the back of the mind. Breath. What do you think really happened in the black line? Leave your theory in the comments. If you crave more unsettling true horror tales or want to hear them in the dark, get 30 days of Audible free. Perfect for horror audiobooks. ATTs. www.audible.com free trial. The right story can make tonight's nightmare tame. Subscribe for a new nightmare delivered every week, and keep the lights on. What do you think was really down there? Tag someone who'd never sleep again, and save this so you don't forget it. Breath.